Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be looking at collage fundamentals and combining images and text. So magazine collage is one of my favourite ways of combining text and images together really quickly and easily. It sort of just helps me process what I want to say, I suppose, and having really quirky images to go along with it I find really helps. So I'm starting off doing a double page. I'm using fluid acrylics, which are a little bit more runny than usual, to create my background really quickly. So I just did a quick coat of yellow over the background, dried that off, then put the red on, and then wiped through a stencil with that. Now I'm putting in the blue, and you'll notice I am overlapping the colours. So I'm overlapping the blue over the red, over the yellow, so I can get some of this layered effect happening. This is Stencil Girl stencil. I think it's called Variegated Circles. I'll hopefully put the link in the description box below for you, because I get a lot of questions about that stencil. It's a really useful one. I use it all the time. So with my layering, I decided I wanted to go with a little bit of a darker blue colour, so I've gone in with some lapis. This is a traditional thick body paint. It still works the same, so you don't have to have a fluid body paint. It all works the same. It is what it is, so whatever you've got, use, basically. So the stencil, that's another Stencil Girl stencil as well. Big loopy lines. I suppose a lot of people ask, why use what am I trying to say? Why wipe the paint away? Thank you, Niamh. That was a big pause for not a big reason. Why wipe the paint away instead of stenciling through it? The reason I like to do it is, particularly a good example with that writing stencil, there is so much space in between that stencil that if I stenciled through it, I would be putting a lot of paint over the top of stuff and I wouldn't be able to see through it. So by wiping the paint away instead, I'm giving an opportunity to actually sort of see some of those layers in the background. Obviously you can do it the other way. It really doesn't matter how you choose to do it. You do you, but I just find for big loopy open stencils like the two that I sort of used, wiping the paint away gives me a finer detail in the end than if I tried to stencil through it. So once I'd done that, I put in a little bit of white just to balance it off. I ended up, the colours in the background got a little bit muddy, which I wasn't particularly happy with, so I decided that I wanted to add a bit of white to brighten it up. I also added some washi tape around the background to act as a border, and then I popped in these two collage image that I had. Now these are collage pieces that I've created myself out of magazine images, and I've added the pen detail over the top using Posca paint pens. I then took a photograph of them, and so I've got them that I can print out whenever I need them. So I've basically made my own little collage sheets, I suppose. Just as you can see though, because they are printed out, the colours are a little bit dull, which, you know, isn't a big issue, but if you want them to be really bright, go over it again with your own paint pen. And I will go over some of this again with paint pen so you can sort of see the difference. So while it works and it all looks good, there is such a difference between putting real paint over the top of something and a printed version of paint over the top. Because the girl was sitting in the chair, I wanted to ground the image somewhat. So I've actually drawn in a bit of a floor for her, and I'm going to use that as my journaling block on the page. I also decided to paint it white because the background was quite dark, that I wanted to balance it up a little bit. So putting those white dots on the page reminded me that I really needed a little bit more white on here. So that's what I chose to use as my background. I'm just going in and doing some journaling about this image, or this series of images. I really loved the side eye this girl was giving someone, so that's why I put the boy or man down in the bottom right hand corner, so she's got someone that she's glaring at. And basically my journaling is just about, you know, those days where someone just tells you something and you just can't process it because you just think, you know, what planet are you from? So that's where that journaling was coming from, basically. With the journaling, I've talked about this before, but for those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. The journaling I have just drawn through, obviously, with the wavy stencil or ruler. You can draw those lines out yourself, but my little rule of thumb for doing that, I suppose, is to write top to bottom, quite thin, narrow letters, so you get this sense of pattern happening across your page. It's still readable journaling, but to our eye, when you first look at it, it's more like pattern or line work than it is about the journaling. So up close, definitely it's readable, but sort of from a distance, you know, it sort of blends in a little bit, which I quite like. When I finished that, I was writing my quote on the page. So using turquoise, because turquoise sort of comes through the collage images quite a bit, and I've written it out with a fine pen first, and now I'm going in and thickening up the letters. So this does two things. First of all, it fills in the space on the page a little bit more. I can extend the letters down or extend them up and just make it look like, oh, it just barely fits on this page. The other thing is, while paint pen is quite opaque, obviously the more layers you do, the more opaque and the brighter the colour is going to be. So you can see that turquoise is getting easier to read with the second coat because it's more opaque on the page. We've got a lot of colour in the background, so if you can balance that out in some way, that's a good thing. With the text on the page, quite often when I do magazine collages, I balance it up with some sort of focal quote, which is what I've got at the top here, and the journaling quote, journaling text down the bottom. Now, usually with my focus quote, it's usually a little bit shorter than this, but this quote really sort of summed up what I wanted to say on the page. So once I finished writing it and doing the extending of the letters, I have dried the paint pen off, and more to do with the fact that, you know, I'm putting my hands back over it again and I don't want it to smudge everywhere, but by drying it off it makes it permanent on the page. Once I've done that, I'm going around with my thin white pen and doing a bit of a highlight on the letters. So I find this helps push the lettering out from the background, gives it a little bit more of a finished look, and I just like the effect of it. So you'll see that sort of in the close-up at the end. To do this, I just pick a side that I'm going to put the lines on and stick with that the whole way through. For me, it's on the bottom left-hand corner of all my letters, or bottom left side of all my letters. You can do it on the top right side. It doesn't really matter what you choose to do it on, as long as you're consistent the whole way through. It's one of those things, if you change it halfway through, it's going to be really, really noticeable, but you'll spend a while going, it doesn't look right, but I'm not sure what's wrong with it. So just be consistent the whole way through where you're choosing to put your drop shadow on it. When I finished that, then tidying up my washi, because I had a bit of a washi explosion. It fell all over the page. Thinking about what I wanted to do with it, if I wanted to add anything else in, but I was actually quite happy with how it all came out. So you can see there in the close-up how the white highlights on it pushes the writing out from the background, how that block of text really grounds it on the ground. If you wanted to, you could go over all those collage images in the background with some more paint pen to push them out. I think in the end I did actually just outline it with black like I usually do, just to make sure that it popped out from the background. So I hope you have a go at doing that. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time, bye for now.